Hello and welcome. This is the Succubus Scholar, and I set up this channel in an effort to enlighten you all to the sources and motivations of the incubi and succubi. Being my first video, I thought it only fitting that I start with the first succubus, the queen of the Lilith, Lilith, as well as the most famous of her origin myths and its source, the Alphabet of Ben Sira. Now, I suspect that Lilith herself would find it rather pleasing that the origin myth of her that so many take as gospel to this day originates from a rather satirical and even heretical work. This is unknown to many even at the time due to its varying censorships. The Ben Sira of the text is likely a reference to Joshua Ben Sira, a Hebrew scholar of the time, who is attributed to the work, the Book of Ecclesiasticus. Though it should be noted that the true author of this text is still unknown to this day. There are many theories, but it's likely we'll never ever know. Now, the satirical and frankly crude nature of the work is given rather early on. We'll start with Ben Sira's miraculous birth, which is given in a rather comical and perverted light. It reveals his father as the prophet Jeremiah, who emitted his seed within the bathwater one day, and his poor hapless daughter happened to share that bathwater and as a result conceived. The son, of course, being none other than Ben Sira. Despite this incestuous union, Ben Sira's genius became apparent very early in his childhood, the moment he came from the womb, in fact. Apparently, as soon as he was born, he turned away his mother's breast milk, speaking quite articulately, and demanded she basically get in the kitchen and cook something. I'd like to think I've been rather indignant and would have disciplined my child thoroughly if he did that as soon as he was born, but there you go. This genius and cheeky nature of Ben Sira would continue throughout his childhood. When his teacher had tried to teach him the alphabet and have him recite it, he instead recited an epigram, beginning with each letter of that alphabet, a story which would comprise much of the work, hence the title. In time, Ben Sira's travels would lead him into the service of King Nebuchadnezzar, which the text states is the son of the mighty King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, which I personally found fascinating, as there are a lot of myths out there claiming that the Queen of Sheba was none other than Lilith herself. So perhaps this is another indirect reference to Lilith within the text that many haven't picked up on. Perhaps unlikely, but I found it interesting nonetheless. Having such a renowned genius of a scholar in his employ, King Nebuchadnezzar would put forth to him the weighty questions that mankind has sought the answer to for centuries. Questions such as, why do ravens walk funny? And why are cats and dogs such enemies? To which Ben Sira would frequently give a fairly comical response. Ben Sira would also play the role of court physician many a time, such as healing the princess who had the terrible affliction of breaking wind 1,000 times an hour, or another of the princesses who would sneeze 1,000 times an hour. As you've probably figured by now, this text is not meant to be taken too seriously. It is when King Nebuchadnezzar's son falls ill, however, that the famous myth involving Lilith comes to the fore. Soon afterward, the young son of the king took ill. Said Nebuchadnezzar, "Heal my son. If you don't, I will kill you." Ben Sira immediately sat down and wrote an amulet with the holy name, and he inscribed on it the angels in charge of medicine by their names, forms, and images, and by their wings, hands, and feet. Nebuchadnezzar looked at the amulet. Who are these? The angels who are in charge of medicine, Sinoi, Sansnoi, and Samanjaloth. After God created Adam, who was alone, he said, "It is not good for man to be alone." He then created a woman for Adam, from the earth as he had created Adam himself, and called her Lilith. Adam and Lilith immediately began to fight. She said, "I will not lie below." And he said, "I will not lie beneath you, but only on top, for you are fit only to be in the bottom position, while I am to be the superior one." Lilith responded, "We are equal to each other inasmuch as we were both created from the earth." But they would not listen to one another. When Lilith saw this, she pronounced the ineffable name and flew away into the air. Adam stood in prayer before his creator. "Sovereign of the universe," he said, "the woman you gave me has run away." At once the Holy One, blessed be he, sent these 3 angels to bring her back. Said the Holy One to Adam, "If she agrees to come back, fine. If not, she must permit 100 of her children to die every day." The angels left God and pursued Lilith, whom they overtook in the midst of the sea, in the mighty waters where the Egyptians were destined to drown. They told her God's word, but she did not wish to return. The angels said, "We shall drown you in the sea." "Leave me," she said. "I was created only to cause sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth, and if female, for 20 days. When the angels heard Lilith's words, they insisted she go back, but she swore to them by the name of the living and eternal God, "Whenever I see your names or your forms in an amulet, I will have no power over that infant." She also agreed to have 100 of her children die every day. Accordingly, every day 100 demons perish, and for the same reason we write the angels' names on the amulets of the young children. When Lilith sees their names, she remembers their oath, and the child recovers. Now, reading this, it's unsurprising that Lilith was seized and held aloft as an icon for the various feminist movements. This tale is clearly another satire of the text, aimed toward ridiculing not only religion, but patriarchal structure, and in particular those origin stories that hold a particularly male dominance. One of the arguments against women back in the day was that Eve, and therefore woman as a whole, is inferior to man as she was made from him, not to mention that she was seduced by the serpent and brought about the fall of man after tasting of the apple. To quote the King James Version of the Bible in Genesis 2:23, "And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." While some see it as rather demeaning to women, it also caused a problem for many biblical scholars. For those who have read the Bible, it is obvious there's large gaps that exist in the text, cut away to produce a more concise version. And this passage revealed one of those gaps, for it suggested that there was a woman before Eve. There was one Hebrew commentator who attempted to explain this away with an even more ridiculous theory than that there's a woman before Eve. Now, Adam committed acts of bestiality with the many beasts of Eden and found them wanting, and that was why God created Eve. But this did not explain the passage of Genesis 1:27. "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." This passage suggests that a female was also created in God's image, one before Eve. In time, this woman would be identified as none other than Lilith, and would be treated as an object of and source of evil, until the Alphabet of Ben Sira that does the opposite, turning the established order on its head and presenting a strong-willed woman even God couldn't handle. Again, in my studies and research of this text, I noticed something that didn't seem to be picked up upon much, and that was Lilith, who managed to learn and pronounce the ineffable name which gave her the powers to fly away. This is likely in reference to the Tetragrammaton, which it is said, if ever pronounced fully, would bring about the end of all creation. That we're still here today suggests Lilith didn't do it fully, just enough to give her the power she wanted. It's never said in the text how Lilith learned this, though my money's betting on her seductive wiles working upon the cherubim who were supposedly guarding Eden at the time, and thus divulging their secrets via pillow talk. It is often said in the occult that to gain control of an entity you must first learn its true name, and that Lilith learned the true name of the Almighty himself suggests that, well, perhaps she is truly too much for him, and that she is free of him as a result. That she is truly her own woman, free even from the gods. And having used it to establish some powers, such as flying, I think this does pretty much establish her not only as the first succubus, but the first witch as well, if not something greater. Sadly, the text doesn't mention where Lilith goes on from her travails after the encounter of the angels upon the Red Sea, but if you look at other texts and fragments of her mythology, It basically states that she goes on to enter the kingdom of the demons and lead a rather prolific lifestyle, where she would give birth to many of their offspring rather than starting off humankind as she was originally meant to. But I will save that for further videos. And that was Lilith within the Alphabet of Ben Sira. I do hope this was informative, if not entertaining for you. I must confess I'm a rather introverted and timid creature, so this has been rather nerve-wracking to put it out there. Nonetheless, I hope to make more videos exploring these ever-real creatures, and hope to only improve with each video. If you have any opinions or suggestions yourself, do leave them in the comments below. I will read them and try and take them on board. If you have any suggestions, by all means mention that too. Until the next time, may Lilith bring you pleasant dreams.